Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. It's my pleasure to review a new edition of a book we've seen before from Spiramus Press. This book is called The Taxation of Small Businesses, 2017 to 18. It's now in its 10th edition. It's been written by Malcolm James, who will be known to many of you. It's available as a paperback and as an ebook. And Elizabeth and I have given the title of our book review to go with this video the following: A Realistic Approach to Tax for the Small Business from Spiramus Press. That's what you're getting. I'm going to explain a bit about what's in the book, communicating it to you via YouTube, which is much easier this day and age rather than just reading the review, so you can get an idea quickly of the by communicating that way. It's a paperback, as I say. It's quite a heavy book, actually. There it is. That's the front of it. Spiramus, the logo. There's the spine, you can see, and then on the back you've got all of the basic information. I borrowed a little bit of the information from the back just to help the review along. There's an index at the back with page numbering. Not a big index, but it's good enough for looking, depending on what you're looking for. The actual index itself starts there. So as I say, it's not a big index. Then you've got the book itself. You've got paragraph numbering, you can see at the sides. The index is actually by page numbering, as I've said, but there is the paragraph numbering. Now the front of it, that's the front page. And after that you've got a useful preface from Malcolm, just setting the scene, and I'll mention that in a book. The book reflects the law as at the 31st of May 2017. Then a bit about Malcolm as the author. He's the senior lecturer in accounting and taxation at Cardiff Metropolitan University and has lectured widely on the subject of taxation, so we know to a lot of people. Then the contents section running through, and then you can see just getting through the end of that. There's quite a lot in the contents section. It's what you would describe as a full contents section, and then after there are 17 chapters, so the actual paragraph numbering is 17 point, and then it as just an example for the last one, just so you can find things quite easily. Then you've got some abbreviations, very helpful with anything to do in this area. Then the case law. Let me just show the abbreviations again. There aren't very many of them. They're all on the same page, but they're at the bottom there. Then you've got some cases, of course. Then after the cases, you've got, he calls them table of authorities, but that includes not just the case law, but includes things like the legislation itself and also some regulations. Then we get into the chapters themselves. Chapter 1, income tax computation. And you see it's very heavy on detail. And rightly too. Fact dense is the current term for some of it, I believe. There you see the paragraph numbering at the sides. Now, this book is designed for small businesses, no question about it. The trouble is that, as with everything in this area, it's complicated. It's unnecessarily complicated, and most people who are entrepreneurs want to get on to running a business. They don't want to be bothered with all this, but they have to be. It's a very important part of the success or otherwise of a business. We must thank Spiramus right at the beginning for continuing to publish these highly informative, excellent books for financial advisors and lawyers involved in small businesses. And what we have here is Malcolm James coming forward and producing what is now an annual edition for 2017-18, a 10th appearance of his book, The Taxation of Small Businesses. As I say, an important subject, a very important part of the British economy, of course. Now, James writes that the book is a practical guide, and these are his words, intended for advisors to small businesses, covering all aspects of direct taxation of small businesses, contained in one single volume. So that's what you're getting. We feel that it's an ideal for sole practitioners and small partnerships or companies to use or refer to, and it acts as a handy reference guide for all tax advisors, and that's what its purpose is. It aims to give a clear explanation of the relevant legislation and practical advice on ways of minimising clients' tax liabilities and warning against common pitfalls, and the new edition has been updated to incorporate changes as a result of the Finance Act 2017 and recent case law. These are the authorities he refers to at the front of the book. That basically concerns what we now call the gig economy, employment as it is currently called. I don't like the term very much, the gig economy, but a gig being basically, for those of you who of a musical bent, a gig is a musical event, if I can put it that way, a gig. So you go to a gig. Well, a gig in the sense of a gig economy is basically a commitment for you to go and do some work at a particular thing. Unfortunately, we have a whole range of nasty little things that are in now called things like 0 hours contracts, which frankly do nothing to help the stability of either small businesses or the employee workforce. But that's another issue. But I do mention that because obviously at the moment that seems to be quite high up the fiscal agenda, this gig economy concept, and it's something we need to look at, bearing in mind what small businesses do and how they operate. Now, as the author says, the tax advantages of incorporating a small business need weighing up carefully. Business owners need to decide whether or not the advantages outweigh the burdens of compliance, because there's a lot to do. What we found helpful about the current edition are some of the less frequent situations we can face in small business tax law, and that's the beauty of the book. A good example is the capital gains tax treatment of assets held on the 6th of April to the 31st of March 1982, which is no longer, this is from 1965, I hasten to add, to 1982, which is no longer relevant to individuals and unincorporated businesses. Now, Malcolm James notes that many small businesses may own assets, basically specifically buildings and land acquired before these dates, which by the way is not that long ago if you think about it, and therefore this sort of information I think will be of great help to entrepreneurs. And as I say, the CGT treatment is often something that worries a lot of people. Now, depending on what you're looking for, let me just run through the contents of what's in the book, because it covers quite a wide range of things which you may be interested in looking for. The contents section is very detailed, so you should be able to find what you're looking for, but it covers taxation of business profits, taxation of employment, corporation tax, national insurance, CGT, inheritance tax, pensions, and so forth. In addition, the author attempts not just to set out the law in a particular area, but where appropriate, the practice of Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs as set out in their manuals. Now, HMRC obviously have a huge amount of information, and I've always found it, frankly, very difficult to follow. And I'm not alone, but at least you've got something which gives you some idea. Now, as we all know, HMRC practice may not be, and this is a quote, may not be a definitive statement of the law. These are this practice, a bit like the practice guidance notes we have in the legal profession itself. In other words, they are there as guidance. That it's the way things are done, and the idea is to give you some idea of the do's and don'ts. Now, what you've got, it may not be therefore the definitive statement, but when it comes to advising businesses, it will generally be prohibitively expensive, we say, and the author says, to challenge it through the courts. So it's advisable to be forewarned through a text like this of HMRC's stance in a particular situation, and we consider that's very valuable advice indeed. Now, the book was published in August 2017. I'm recording this in the autumn, and it reflects the law as at the 31st of May 2017. And the author points out, which I always thought was rather amusing here, that for convenience, the masculine pronoun has been used throughout and no discrimination is intended. So you have been told. And I'm glad he said that, actually, because we do tend to use the male gender all the time, and then some use the female gender all the time, and it's difficult, but we get a balance there eventually. Now, Malcolm, thank you very much for this book. Here it is again. There's the spine, and then on the back you can see the information. I've just run through the book very quickly. Let me just open it. Employment income. There we go. Expenses, Class 1 NIC. Straight in is a lot of stuff. Reimbursement of expenses on income tax and so forth. Qualifying travel expenses, the case law. There are quite a lot of cases. And in fact, I would think whatever government's in power, there will be more cases coming up. Because obviously there are more occasions when there are differences of opinion, travel expenses, agency workers, etc. All the travel expenses are covered there. So you can see the issues that are raised very much by the contents of the book. Spiramus have done us a really great favour with this and the other books in their stable of publications. I'm very grateful to all of them and to Carl Upsall for presenting them and actually giving us a tremendous additional service, which I think is of great benefit to everybody involved in the small business world. So thank you to everybody who's been concerned with this publication. It's greatly appreciated. Bye-bye.